At 11:59 p.m., suppressing the anger of being woken by my phone, I pushed open the gilded private room door. Sorry to interrupt, everyone. I've come to pick up my partner. The next second, the New Year's countdown in the room came to an abrupt halt. Dozens of eyes from the social elites in the room fixed uniformly on me. The man seated in the center, impeccably dressed in a suit with stern features, was leisurely rubbing his wine glass. Claire? Someone broke the dead silence first. Today is the New Year's gathering for Peking University undergraduate alumni, not a shelter for subpar non-key second-tier universities. Laughter erupted. Isn't this the female lead from the Sole Mist-ism incident back then? To win a beauty's smile, the top student from Jiang University wrote materialism as Mist-ism throughout the entire exam paper, nearly driving the professor to death from anger. I heard it was you who schemed to climb into your stepbrother's bed and repeatedly forced marriage, otherwise, how could he marry an academic underachiever like you? Now his wife is a Cambridge PhD, that's a perfect match. How dare you show up? The gazes from the full table pierced like fine needles. They would never know. Evan was once the last in the entire school, he desperately reversed to first place, all for me. However, past events were no longer important. Facing everyone's stares, without the expected embarrassment, I tugged at the corner of my mouth and calmly said, I'm not here to accompany you elites for the New Year's crossover, I'm here to take my husband home. Evan finally looked up, his eyes deep. Claire, we divorced 3 years ago. I gently curved my lips into a standard professional smile. I know. So, I didn't say I was here to pick you up, Mr. Evan. So shameless, still taking advantage of Evan after divorce. Suppressed snickers arose in the private room. Ryan lit a cigarette and looked at me casually. First time seeing someone eagerly volunteering to be the mistress. Ryan was my and Evan's best friend in high school. He was once the second best person to me in the world. But when Evan and I were divorcing, he unhesitatingly sided with Evan. Because the girl he liked was the third party in our marriage. And he had been helping Evan conceal their relationship. Only I, from beginning to end, was kept in the dark like a fool. Ryan, stop it. Evan pursed his lips and coldly reprimanded. Ryan, unconvinced, stubbed out the cigarette with a face full of impatience. What's wrong with saying a few words? Claire, this idiot, can't compare to someone like Sister Irene, an intellectual elite. Only you would fancy such a fool, wasting several years on her. Evan met my eyes and said solemnly, Claire isn't stupid. Claire isn't stupid. Coming from a genius like Evan, it actually seemed somewhat ridiculous. But those words, the 16-year-old Claire believed. In the year I graduated from junior high, my mom and Evan's dad formed a new family. Evan and I were of similar age and attended the same ordinary high school. We were in the same class, he was last, and I was mid-ranked. Evan hated me, so he never spoke to me. I often saw Evan fighting with others, then getting punished. Immediately after, my mom would come to school for training, humbly enduring insults. One night when I went out for water, I saw my mom sitting on the sofa in the middle of the night, wiping tears. Claire, how can Evan accept me? I didn't know. I only knew that after that day, my and Evan's originally plain interaction mode became tense. I sprinkled mustard in his drink, poured dirty water into his backpack, and put laxatives in his lunchbox. Evan issued a threat, what other tricks? Claire, I tell you, if you can't kill me, I'll kill your mom. We confronted each other like this for over half a year. I thought I would hate Evan for life. But in the end, he became the only person in the world who still loved me. My conflict with Evan ended after a domestic violence incident. Evan's dad beat my mom into the hospital. When she was sent to the ambulance, his dad was still spouting nonsense. I've chased you for a year or two, besides being pretty, you're worthless and have no skills. My mom, nearly 40, had been spoiled by my dad in her first half of life, naturally knowing nothing. When hearing this, Evan's indifferent expression instantly collapsed. He looked at me in shock, muttering, "It wasn't your mom seducing my dad." Evan hated my mom, He always thought it was my mom who actively intervened in his parents' marriage, causing his mom to leave. It didn't matter, because after that day, I no longer had a mom. When I went to the hospital with my mom's favorite white frangipani to see her, I learned she had run away. She took nothing. Nor did she take me. Claire had no home. I didn't know where to go. While wandering on the roadside in the middle of the night, Evan found me. His eyes were red, looking angry. I feared he would hit me and curled up. In fear, his warm embrace enveloped me. For the first time, I heard him speak so gently. "Claire, come home with me. From now on, I'll be your whole world." I took his extended hand and held it tightly. So, from the age of 16, Claire's whole world contained only Evan. After my mom left, Evan's dad's temper became increasingly irritable. Evan, fearing I'd get hurt, took me and moved out. Our life continued, but differently from before. I no longer played pranks. Evan softened his gaze. Evan spent more time studying. I couldn't help asking, "You used to dislike reading in classes." He looked at me seriously, finally pinching my face helplessly and saying warmly, "Claire, I want you to have a better life." Seeing his reddened ear tips, I nodded emphatically. Claire must absolutely not hold Evan back. So I studied even harder, but when Evan reversed from last in the grade to first, I still lingered in the middle. Evan tutored me at home until midnight. I shook my head at the derivative problems. He said, "Claire, you're really dumb. But I like your dumb cuteness, it's adorable to death." Drowsiness hit, the pen slipped from my hand. I muttered, "Evan, can you walk slower? I'm about to not catch up." Evan said I never need to chase him, he would always wait for me. He didn't fulfill it. Later, he hated my dumb appearance the most. It annoyed him. Not dumb? You put so much effort into tutoring her back then, and in the end, she only got into a crappy second-tier university? Ryan played with the lighter, continuing the topic. I glanced around and didn't see my husband Julian. Julian was indeed from the same school as Evan but different colleges. They probably wouldn't gather together. I thought he might have sent the wrong address. I was too lazy to entangle in past matters. "Excuse me." I tossed this sentence and left. Sent Julian a message with no reply, calls were unanswered. I prepared to go home first. Before pulling the car door, a hand grabbed my wrist first. "Sister, forgive me, okay?" Evan lowered his eyes, with an expression I couldn't understand. Sister, this term. It once made me blush and became an excellent way to flirt with someone rigid like Evan. But later, this brother-sister phrase doomed me eternally. "Evan, are you addicted to acting?" I shook off his hand, expressionless. "I have no brother." As the atmosphere froze, a light scoff broke the awkwardness. "Claire, didn't expect to see you here." Irene approached in high heels, as arrogant and overbearing as ever. In the past, I would have been intimidated by her aura long ago. I would also envy, admire, and involuntarily feel inferior. But now, after that unbearable past repeatedly tormented my heart, what remained was calm. "Claire, why not come home with me and Evan? Your mom misses you too." I couldn't imagine myself saying so calmly after 3 years, "I have no mom. My brother, my mom. All chose her, Irene. I had long abandoned them." Irene grabbed my wrist, inadvertently revealing the jade bracelet on her wrist. This was the family heirloom Evan's mom left him. I wore this bracelet for 10 years. My relationship with Evan also lasted only 10 years. Ryan was right, I was really dumb. So even though Evan tutored me with all his might, I could only barely get into a second-tier university. Evan himself successfully claimed the top spot in that year's college entrance exam and went to Peking University. Evan and I were both in Beijing, not too far apart. Though we couldn't be together often, our days were sticky and sweet. It was the simplest happiness, an unforgettable memory in my life. Evan was handsome and outstanding enough, many pursued him. But he gave me full security. In university, I often went to his school to find him. He was too famous, any stir attracted attention. Gradually, forums said I didn't deserve him. Besides my face, worthless, no ability, no background, a fool daring to reach for a god. Evan had already officially announced us. He was angry upon knowing this, saying others didn't know my goodness. So in a final politics exam, he wrote all materialism as Mist-ism. He nearly failed and was criticized by the college for being love-brained. This incident shocked the entire campus. Evan feared others not knowing I was his girlfriend, but at marriage, he said, "Claire, let's have a hidden marriage. Wait a few more years, after I achieve success, I'll marry you grandly." I agreed. In the 4th year of marriage, Evan had already succeeded in his career. I didn't wait for the longed-for wedding. What I got was his infidelity. On our 4th wedding anniversary, Evan threw a huge tantrum because I lost the bracelet he gave me. He slammed the door and left in anger. It was the first time in his life he spoke harshly to me. That day, in heavy rain, I searched all places we'd been. I recalled recently visiting the small house from high school where Evan and I lived. Evan later bought that house because its walls had thousands of our photos over 3 years. The moment I pushed the door open, I saw Evan pressing another woman beneath him. Passionate collision. At that moment, my scalp tingled, and I lost my voice instantly. I knew her, Irene. Evan mentioned her to me, but sparingly. At first, he said Irene's dad forced her into his company. He thought she was probably a troublemaker. But later, he said Irene was very capable and smart. From then on, Evan started thinking I was dumb. Our common topics decreased. Evan would always say, "Can you stop asking? I say it, but you won't understand. Claire, you're so dumb." But I was genuinely happy he found a compatible partner. Now, Irene wore that bracelet, her eyes full of provocation. Tormented by guilt, I searched everywhere like a dog for the item. It turned out I didn't lose it. Evan had personally given it to someone else. She stood up leisurely and leaned into Evan's arms. "What are you surprised about? In your Beijing bed, bathroom, floor-to-ceiling windows, we've done it everywhere. Today, we just wanted to try the place where you two first did it." I only felt ringing in my ears, my whole body weak. By bodily instinct, I grabbed the photo frame on the table and smashed it over. Evan protected her in his arms, his eye corners red. "Claire, you're crazy." The person who once said he would be my whole world pushed me heavily to the ground. My hands were covered in glass shards. That photo was my and Evan's first together. He held me in his arms, proudly as if showing off. But now, it was shattered, and his eyes before me were full of annoyance. Before recovering, another bombshell exploded in my ear. "Claire, can you stop making a fuss? You're so suffocating, no wonder your mom didn't want you." It turned out my mom remarried later. She married Irene's dad and truly spoiled Irene for 10 years. My 10-year fantasy became a nightmare at this moment. Later, Evan wanted to divorce me. I didn't want to fulfill their wish, but I couldn't fight them. All the people I loved turned against me, my lover, my friend, and my mom. Evan locked me in the Beijing villa. For nearly a week, he vented all his anger on me. "I won't divorce, you dream of marrying her." At that time, it seemed the marriage certificate was my only card. Stubborn like a madwoman. A week later, a mosaiced video was exposed. The voice was clear. "Brother, I like you the most, love Claire a bit more." This was from when he often traveled. He said when I wasn't by his side, he needed consolation. Evan was terribly proper. So when he proposed filming a video, I was both shy and surprised. Evan and Irene understood marketing too well. This sentence pushed me to the forefront. Adding fuel were my own mom and best friend. My mom said I committed incest, seduced Evan, forcing her to divorce. Ryan said Evan cared for me meticulously for years, treating me only as a sister. It was my ingratitude, climbing into his bed, forcing Evan to take responsibility and marry me. The final blow came from Evan. As I lay numbly in bed watching accusations from family and friends, Irene came to see me. She said she confessed to Evan in university. Evan rejected her. The reason was he didn't deserve her. If she was willing, she could wait a few more years until he had the strength to stand by her side openly. That night, I relented and agreed to divorce. When signing, I thought of the past. The 16-year-old Evan was spirited, saying he wanted to give me a better life. But in the 26-year-old Evan's future, there was never Claire. I wiped away tears, enduring to ask him, what was I? A compromise? Or just a consolation before you found your beloved? Evan said, Claire, I liked you, it's true. I held back tears. The liking was true, the change of heart was also true. During the cooling-off period, I hardly dared go out. My and Evan's matter was too big. Going out, lightly I'd be scolded and mocked, heavily, harassed variously. On the day of getting the divorce certificate, I discovered I was pregnant. Evan and I tried for 2 years without progress, but ironically on divorce day, I returned to the place from high school. After divorce, I wanted nothing but that property. I threw away the bed they slept on and huddled on the sofa daily. Listened to songs, play guitar, read books. When thinking of Evan, I'd burn photos. At first, I could burn hundreds a day. I set a rule to space at least an hour. Later, burning photos decreased. I ignored the child in my belly. The child probably knew I didn't want her. She was very good, very good. In 6 months, I suffered little. But at the 6th month, I aborted her. Because in the 6th month after divorce, Evan and Irene married. A very grand wedding, grander than the one I imagined Evan would give me but never did. That day, my photos were all burned. How could 26-year-old Claire be dumber than 16-year-old Claire? What 16-year-old Claire held tightly, 26-year-old Claire could let go. In Claire's world, there would be no more Evan. Claire, you've become unrecognizable, you weren't so cold before. Evan frowned at me. I hooked my lips in a smile, is that so? You used to say you only loved me. Irene glared viciously, Claire, don't be so shameless, seducing my husband in front of me. I'm not interested in your husband. I glanced at Evan, my heart without a ripple. I pushed them away, don't block, I'm going home. The moment I opened the car door, a burly man's rough howl echoed in the garage, sister-in-law. Don't go. Your husband can't find you and is about to turn this place upside down. Leo ran to me panting, face pale. Damn, good thing you're not lost, my brother almost killed me. I was a bit slow to react. Looking up, Evan's face froze, he opened his mouth and squeezed out, you're married? When? To whom? I didn't want to explain much to him. The next second, I was pulled into a familiar embrace, the hand on my shoulder wore a ring matching mine. Julian pinched the soft flesh on my nape, tone cold, who are you? Does my wife need to report her marriage to you? He's my ex-husband. I tugged Julian's sleeve, breaking the ice, what's with you? You asked me to pick you up but you're nowhere, and calls don't go through. Compared to Evan's matter, Julian clearly cared more about mine. Leo. Julian gritted his teeth. Leo was tearful, haven't seen sister-in-law for so long, just wanted to see you, so used brother's phone to message you, but sent the wrong room number. Leo touched his head, bitter-faced, brother is really something, everyone brought dates, but not him. How long since I saw you? Julian freed a hand and punched Leo's head. Your wife, my wife? Why should you see her? I was amused and quickly explained, I had a singing gig today, so didn't come. Leo ran far before speaking, probably fearing another hit, sister-in-law, I want your cake, remember to bring next time out. I'm going. Over there done? Leo disrupted your plan? Julian said apologetically. I shook my head, took his hand, and prepared to leave. Irene crossed her arms, sarcastically, Julian, do you know your wife was married? Julian pulled me closer, yes. Claire, you didn't mention your thing with Evan to him? Irene continued, embarrassed? After all, you begged Evan like a dog not to divorce. I frowned, not divorcing him then was just to disgust you, no other idea. Julian glanced at Evan, lazily, what ex-husband, too insignificant. My Claire doesn't bother mentioning. Claire, you. Irene wasn't finished when Evan pulled her away. From afar came Irene's grumbling, loud and noisy, very annoying. Evan, you still have her in your heart, right? Look how tense you are. Julian took my hand. Let's go, miss, home. In the car, Julian carefully placed a guitar in my hands. This was one of the few relics my dad left me. When he was alive, I always couldn't learn guitar and had no interest. Back then, Evan, angry that I lost his mom's relic, smashed the guitar my dad left me. Later, I spent much effort finding someone to repair it. In the 6 months alone in that small house, I learned to play guitar. Later, I sang residency at a small bar there, where I met Julian. He came every day, always requesting the same song, What I Mississippi. Coincidentally, it was the song I sang best from childhood, as it was the tune my dad played most. Recalling Dad's appearance, I played it over and over. At closing, Julian blocked my way. Claire, don't cry, I won't request this next time, okay? I shook my head. If you like it, I'll sing for you. Julian nodded slightly. Oh, okay. On his 128th visit, we got together. Later, we stayed abroad for years, returning recently. Miss, can't we play another? Julian held me and kissed. If it breaks again, it'll be really hard to fix. Our dad must be stomping in heaven. He feigned anger. Damn Claire, not taking my relic seriously. I knew Julian didn't refuse to fix it. He worried if he couldn't, I'd be sad. I nodded, couldn't help curiosity. You don't ask about my past? Julian raised a brow. No need, I know. Tisk investigated me. Wife, don't accuse, I'm a witness, okay? So I heard a story completely different from what I thought about meeting Julian. In high school, I went to your school for a friend. Wasn't it your school anniversary performance? I happened to hear you sing. I leaned in Julian's arms, hearing his drum-like heartbeat. No need to look, he must be blushing. My wife is amazing, truly love at first sight. So, the years I liked Evan, you were liking me too? Julian sighed. Otherwise? I couldn't poach, or how would you see me? I blinked, tears and lashes. Claire is a fool. Julian is a big fool. Our young master never ate cake since childhood, but when Madam worked at the cake shop, he ordered yours daily. Julian coughed lightly. Wilson, you're talkative. At the start of my job, my cakes were ugly. But daily at least one order. Years later, all doubts revealed. I nestled in Julian's arms, adjusted comfortably, hugged his waist, softly. It was you. At night, Julian carried me to bath. Julian's jealousy arrived late. Claire, say, do you like me or him? Looking at myself in the mirror, lips swollen, I muffled, only like you. Who am I? Julian pinched my face, squinting at me in the mirror. Julian, Julian, Julian. I felt ashamed, shouting randomly. Wrong, it's husband. Julian lifted me, gently placed on bed. Wrong call, continue punishment. The moment I climbed his shoulder, phone rang. Julian frowned and answered, who? Silence opposite, I realized it was my phone. Where's Claire? It was Evan's voice. Julian glanced at me, seeming angrily amused, coaxed to sleep. Hung up, pressed down. Miss, can I kill your ex? Julian is really cute when jealous. I covered my mouth laughing. Why didn't you use me to provoke him? I thought you'd make me make noise on purpose. Julian Ed, truly making me voice. Finally, he held me, gently kissing my face. I don't want others to hear my baby's voice. This is a beautiful moment exclusive to us two. My possessiveness is strong, but not at the cost of your shame. I turned, couldn't help thinking. Evan used to do this. Once receiving my suitor's call, he'd deliberately proclaim I was his. I was too silly then, not blaming him, even feeling shameful glee. But Julian is different. Really different. Julian, how are you so good? When Julian went to company, I took orders at home, made private cakes. Occasionally sang at nearby bar. During this, Evan added me several times, I rejected all. Finally, not sure how he knew I sang at the bar, he came. He was outstanding looking, conspicuous in the crowd, especially staring motionless at me. Sister Claire, another captivated by you. Band member smiled ambiguously, this one's fucking high quality, your husband would be pissed if he knew. I retorted, no way, my husband is higher quality. I ignored Evan, immersed in playing guitar and singing. Someone requested what I missed 10 times. Singing it again, I no longer teared. Because 3 years ago, someone wiped my tears personally. At closing, Evan wanted to buy me a drink. I checked time, 6:30. So agreed, some words and matters needed clarifying. Claire, you used to love singing this in my arms. Evan sipped wine. But later, you'd only think my singing noisy, affecting your logic, your life. I increasingly couldn't fit in. Evan, chasing you was really tiring. Evan lowered eyes, you in blonde hair and red dress are beautiful, confident, you never dressed like this by my side before. He loves you a lot, right? Evan looked seriously, you now, look like a princess. Evan wasn't wrong. Julian spoiled me, when with him, I was quite insecure. Still looking emotionally wounded, somewhat daring not to fully accept the next relationship. So he always called me Miss. At first, I felt unworthy. But his love was warm. Enough to melt the ice in my heart into gentle water, later I became more at ease. I responded sporadically, not knowing what Evan wanted, yes, I love him too. Evan ordered another drink, Claire, in these 3 years, I never forgot you. I always recall you calling me brother, saying you love me. No matter how late from work, you'd wait in the living room, at night must hug me to sleep, obediently, always by my side. Honestly, hearing this now, I felt nothing. As if those things weren't done by me. Evan, I really couldn't love again. With Julian Long, I became sharp-tongued, I said flatly, oh, then I think you're better suited to raise a dog. Evan smiled bitterly, turned to face me, Claire, do we still have? His words stopped abruptly, then quickly pulled me into his arms. When reacting, blood dripped on my palm. It was Evan's. Evan, is this your so-called overtime? Irene held half a broken bottle, expression twisted. Evan protected my waist, rubbed his temple, and stood. Irene wanted to advance and hit me, but Evan intercepted midway. His tone fierce, have you made enough fuss? Have you made enough fuss? Claire, have you made enough fuss? He said this to me 3 years ago. I stood by Evan, quietly watching Irene pushed to the ground, couldn't help thinking, was my expression so ugly back then? Really no interest in watching this farce. I wiped the blood on my palm, turned to leave, you two have fun, I'm going home. If not home before 7, my husband will come catch me. A common explanation, said to colleagues countless times. After saying, I realized why tell them. Claire. Irene looked resentfully, tears on face, somewhat disheveled, are you very smug? Evan revolves around you, Julian too. I took a deep breath. Turned, raised hand and slapped Irene hard, she turned her head, wanted to retaliate but Evan held her. Smug about what? Evan used to revolve only around me, but later you two forced me to desperation, what am I smug about? Really unpleasant. I grabbed her hair, slapped her hard again. Irene glared at Evan, he firmly held her hand. Irene's eyes red and swollen, roared at him, Evan, you're crazy, I'm your wife. Evan glanced at me, Irene, this is what we owe Claire. This sudden realization came too late, pretentious. Really disgusting, I checked time and rushed out. Entering, I bumped into Julian leaving. Skillfully raised hands in surrender, I'm back, don't catch me. Why blood? Julian frowned, immediately hugged me to get the first aid kit. Not my blood. I held his hand, explained the afternoon's events. Julian's face darkened more, I spoke softer. That's it. Julian lowered head, or cold but words weak. Before, you didn't want to say, I wouldn't ask or check. But since you told me, I'll send people to investigate. Claire, if only I met you earlier. For Evan, whatever I do, don't blame me. Julian lifted eyelids, eyes full of visible sorrow. Okay? I pursed lips, heart twitching. Whatever, why ask me? You're my husband, not him. Julian scraped my nose. You have conscience. Days later, I knew what Julian meant to do. Because Evan's harassments decreased. Counting, I blocked dozens of his numbers. He always sent essays, then Julian's acting addiction kicked in, imitating tones reading to me, funny and speechless. Then complained, your ex is trash, essays useless on our Claire. Yes, Julian's practiced result. I don't like mutual confessions, prefer direct actions. So even if Julian angers me sometimes, he apologizes, then strongly loves me. Much better than burying in my heart. Julian fits all my lover fantasies. So I said, husband, let's have a child. Wife, later, I still want do a world with you. So a month later, when I found pregnant, Julian exploded, you want a child that much? I nodded. Claire, later child or me, choose who? I didn't speak, how to choose. Can't have both? Claire, say choose me. But now, soothing dad's mood important. I coaxed Julian, choose you, I love you forever most. After prenatal check, roadside had long queue net famous food. I suddenly craved, capriciously made Julian queue. I waited nearby, watching him approached by many girls. Then deliberately distanced while showing ring. Gentle and gentlemanly. Julian, you're Claire's whole world. Claire. While watching Julian, I met Evan unseen for days. He was haggard, thinner, listless. Eyes still bright, I imitated Julian, deliberately stepped back half. What? Evan pursed lips, expression difficult, hesitating. He spoke, Irene and I divorced. Facing Evan again, I really didn't know what to say. His matters I really didn't care. Not because of you. Evan smiled bitterly, because I feel Irene never as cute as my Claire. I touched my belly, pondered, Evan, I'm pregnant, I hope you don't disturb me anymore. I'm very happy now. Evan lowered head, after long, said, okay. Evan, on divorce day I went to hospital, I was pregnant. At 6 months, I aborted, that day was your wedding with Irene. Evan, the wedding you gave her was much grander than I imagined for mine. Finally, watching the man's reddening eyes, I slowly said, don't mistake obsession for deep love, you didn't love me that much. At home quietly nurturing fetus, my mother-in-law worried. That woman touring globally year-round gave up freedom, accompanied me daily. Fearing I'd be depressed. Whole family tense, especially Julian. Nightly lay beside me cursing the kid, childishly. One day lounging on sofa watching drama, knock came outside. Open door, outside stood my birth mom unseen for 10 years. She held lunchbox, a bunch of white frangipani. Awkwardly, Claire. Irene's dad's company. I smiled, I actually don't like white frangipani, I liked because you said you did. Like dad, I love red roses most. The flower unsent 10 years ago now in my hand. But I long didn't want it. Inside, mother-in-law called, baby, come drink soup, your favorite. I responded, coming, mom. Then closed door. All past irrelevant to me. At night, I entered room first. Heard mother-in-law whispering to Julian, Claire's mood bad today, you must coax well, mom heartbroken, dare not ask. I sat on bed edge, body immobile, tears bursting. When Julian entered holding a large bunch of vibrant red roses, before he spoke, I rose and hugged his waist, Julian, thank you for your love. From above came light laughs, Julian touched my hair top, tone gentle, not easy, heard my miss say thanks. Belatedly realized Julian spoiled me too lawlessly. Julian, you heard, He held my face, lowered head seeking my lips, finally kissing. Wife, kiss me, Just kiss is fine. After one kiss, looking outside window, at arms. Smiled from heart. Grateful. Julian nurtured his intense red roses alive. Claire, should be this dazzling. Claire, Julian loves you most. You should know, right?